Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. Welcome to Brain Club. Share screen. Get us oriented to our conversation. Tonight is our book chat on a book that we have covered at Brain Club about a year ago. We're going to cover it again because I think that it is often helpful to have a shared vocabulary, and even folks who have spent some time thinking about this book. It's often interesting to reflect on, hey, all this time later, how's it landing? Before we get going, closed captions are enabled. You just have to toggle them on at your end if you'd like to use them. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. You can also do the same and choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. If you're new to Brain Club and new to All Brains Belong, welcome. Everyone else, welcome back. So here we are supporting the health and belonging of people with all types of brains in lots of different ways, including here at Brain Club. And you are invited to be part of what it is that we're doing together. Brain Club is our education program where we gather to demonstrate our approach to neuro-inclusive culture. And shift broader community awareness of issues and topics of concern and importance to our community. It's also a place where we broker alliances with other communities and promote new ways of thinking and being in the world. And that then you take this forth into the rest of your lives, and that is how culture change happens. Everyone is welcome here at Brain Club. Brain Club is not an affinity space. Many attendees are neurodivergent people. Others are people who support neurodivergent people who are exploring their neuroidentity, and anyone with all types of brains who wants to learn about neuro-inclusive culture. There are multiple right ways to participate here. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. Feel free to walk around or move or fidget or stim or eat or take breaks. During a portion of tonight will be a past recording that we'll watch, and you're welcome to use the chat while we watch, and then we should have time for some discussion afterwards, and you can use mouth words, chat, or not at all. Observation at Brain Club is always a valid form of participation. Brain Club has an intentionally created culture, and here are some of the things that you'll notice. First, we structure this to be for education purposes only. It's not for medical or mental health advice, even when we're talking about a topic like the nervous system, as we are tonight. It's not a support group or a place for audience to discuss their own trauma. We keep the focus on moving forward. You will hear us. Hold on one second. I'm just going to mute sound. We do criticize systems and aspects of systems that make it difficult for people to get their needs met, but we don't criticize people. It's a place where we invite everyone to come and to learn, and we build alliances through that learning. If it's your first time at Brain Club, it's okay to take a few times to to figure out the space and how we facilitate it, and we recommend observing the first time or two. Lizzie's going to put some frequently asked questions in the chat. Thank you to all of our Brain Club supporters who make it possible for us to be here providing content on a weekly basis. We could not do this without you. Thank you so much for your support. And a couple of announcements before we get into our book. If you've missed the last couple weeks, we announced that we have a podcast now. I think our 5th episode is going to post on Friday morning. It posts on the 2nd and 4th Fridays of every month. It's not always the same topic that we covered, that week at Brain Club. It's like Brain Club's greatest hits now being converted to a podcast. So check it out. And we are coming up upon our 5th annual Shifting the Autism Narrative, the Impact of Stigma on Health. This is offered mid-April every year, where we take a look at the stigmatizing narrative of autism and the healthcare system's role in perpetuating stigma. We look at some alternatives. And last announcement, registration is open for next month's Brain Club. Lizzie's going to put that link in the chat. Next month's theme is the cost of masking, where we're going to be looking at masking in relationships, in healthcare, at work, and revisiting another excellent book, A Little Less Broken: How an Autism Diagnosis Made Me Whole by Miriam Shambari. But now we will cap off our, we had a 2-month theme of exploring the nervous system over January and February, and we're going to be looking at our book chat. If you've not been to a Brain Club book chat before, we don't expect you to have read the book or listened to the book. We share clips and excerpts from the book and clips of the author speaking. And then at the end, we ask what stood out to you if you'd like to share. All right, so here we go. Let me stop share, move our video over. And here we go. This book. I always forget to turn up the volume before I go into share screen because it won't let me adjust it if I've not. Let's try that again. Anchored is written by Deb Dana, who is a clinician, a consultant, and an author, of course, specializing in polyvagal theory. So polyvagal theory was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, and so Deb Dana collaborates with Dr. Porges. And what polyvagal theory really is, and I think one of our video clips talks about this, but it's the idea of a more nuanced and sophisticated and accurate understanding of the autonomic nervous system. It's the idea that there is a predictable way that the autonomic or automatic part of the nervous system functions. And so that's what this book's about. It's really about it's like a guide to understanding how our nervous system shapes our daily experiences and translates the science of that into everyday life. I had a slide about that. Who knew? So the other thing that's really interesting about this book is that there are a number of experiential prompts and practices to explore your own nervous system and how to have like some exercises or practices about how to like shift different parts of the nervous system, which are very interesting. We're not going to do there's like one I'll show you that is maybe less deep, but we're mostly not going to get into practices so that we can keep this in the education space. It might get too confusing if we're practicing therapeutic activities, but it's got a lot of really interesting techniques. Why we almost didn't do this book chat and why our advisory committee like had to really think about whether we want to do this book chat, it's because, you know, the nervous system is complicated. And given that the majority of our community has suffered relational trauma of one form or another, when we think about the nuances of an autonomic nervous system that is constantly in fight, flight, or freeze, related to past trauma and the post-traumatic or complex post-traumatic results of relational trauma. We thought we could talk about the science of the nervous system without getting into the therapeutic space. We don't want to be in the therapeutic space today, even though we do that in other programs. We wanted to not be in that space today because we don't have longitudinal relationships with most of you, and it can be not safe to like start dabbling in therapeutic things without having good follow-up and good safe relationships. So we're going to stay, it's going to be hard, but we're going to stay in the classroom type of approach to understanding the autonomic nervous system. If you've missed our other January brain clubs, I'm going to do a recap
of kind of like the basics of the nervous system. So, what we covered the first week of January is that the autonomic nervous system governs our internal body processes, these things that happen automatically. So your heartbeat, your blood pressure, your digestion, and basically the autonomic nervous system's role is to store, release, and conserve energy and help us move safely through life. And what's really a lot of people like feel like their nervous system is controlling them, and they feel like it's like greatly mysterious and troublesome to people. And so that's because often we don't understand it. When we do understand our autonomic nervous system, we can learn how to work with it, and that's what this book is about. Hold on, I need the book to be open. All right. Okay. My mouse, what just happened? Here we go. Sorry. All right. So I'm going to read this book I'm not going to read the whole book to you. I'm going to read this quote from the book. So Deb Dana writes, "A polyvagal informed understanding of our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors offers us a way to be with our experiences instead of being hijacked by them." And certainly, we hear from lots of people that that's their experience. They feel like their nervous system is hijacking their experience. So I'm gonna read the rest of this paragraph. When we're flooded by our emotions, we lose connection to regulation and lose the ability for reflection. From an anchor in safety and regulation, we can connect to our states and listen to our stories with the distance needed for reflection. So the idea of developing a scientific understanding of your nervous system is so that there can be this neutral way of discussing, exploring, understanding what goes on in everyday life. So what Deb Dana outlines in this book is that the autonomic nervous system has hold on, I'm gonna go. The autonomic nervous system has these three principles. This is what's outlined in this book. So hierarchy, and what the hierarchy means is that the states of the nervous system like proceed in a particular order. And we're going to look at a graphic on the next slide to better understand that. But that the autonomic nervous system has these three states. There is the ventral vagal. So vagal refers to the vagus nerve. So one branch of the vagus nerve is associated with safety and connection. There's the sympathetic nervous system. So the vagus nerve is associated with the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system, that fight, flight, that's kind of what it gets a rap for. But what is often kind of what's new in the polyvagal theory world is that it's not as simple as parasympathetic versus sympathetic. Instead, the vagus nerve has these two branches. One is safety connection, one is shutdown and collapse. And so we move through these three states in a predictable order. And that's what the hierarchy means, and predictable order based on how safe or threatened we feel. And we'll look at that. She talks about neuroception. Neuroception is our threat detection system. Subconsciously, the nervous system is constantly scanning the environment for cues of danger or threat, or cues of safety. It's beneath our conscious awareness. It's not something we're aware of, it just happening automatically, and really reacting to things in the external environment and the internal environment. And lastly, co-regulation. And we talk about this all the time at Brain Club, that human beings are wired for connection and rely on relationships to regulate their nervous system. There's a lot of mythology about regulation, like, oh, well, you're 5 years old, you should have self-regulation skills. Oh my gosh, we all need other nervous systems to regulate. And in fact, later we'll look at an excerpt from the book that talks about how failure to have safe co-regulating experiences in early life really does interfere with developing self-regulation skills. But even when you have self-regulation skills, we still need co-regulation. Co-regulation creates a sense of safety and I don't really like the word resilience, but anyway, because it's buzzwordy and stuff, and it like makes it feel like it's a characteristic of an individual as opposed to really like we need community. So I like this quote. Let me flip to the page. I decided not to put a million words on the slide, but I think this might be one that I wanted to read more of. All right, so without, so you can think of neuroception as autonomic intuition. Right, so many of us have been taught to override our intuition, often as young children, like, hey, I think this is bad. It's not bad. I think it's hot. It's not hot. I think it's cold. It's not cold. I think it's loud. It's not loud. Right. So we've been overriding our intuition and our sense of like appraising our own internal experience even. And so often that is an important thing for adults to then like have to unlearn and relearn, is reconnecting with intuition. Deb Dana writes, without awareness, neuroception works in the background, serving our survival and shaping our days. It is when we bring perception to neuroception that we have access to perspective. By adding perception to the autonomic process of neuroception, we're no longer simply in the state. We are now able to be with it, observe it, reflect on the experience. I'm going to play a short video clip. This is Deb Dana talking about how the nervous system affects our daily life. Stop share. I like really need to figure out my computer better. Here we go. All right, we're gonna rewind. I'm gonna reshare my screen. Yes, Liz, I agree. We all need continual co-regulation. Share sound. Here we go. Just gonna watch 3 minutes of this.
Hi, Deb.
Hello, how are you?
So you have spent a lot of your work paying attention to how the nervous system affects us, how we respond to situations. You've done that within the framework of therapy. Now let's pay attention to how this kind of learning could inspire us in the way we lead our lives.
Yes, it's a thank you for this invitation to try and translate my clinical language into everyday, ordinary, user-friendly language for what I've begun to start calling just curious human beings. Because in my trainings recently, I've had many people come who they just want to know about their nervous system, just want to kind of figure out what is this thing that's helping me navigate my life. So what I guess I would say in the beginning is that the nervous system is the foundation for all of us. It's where all of our experience begins. And so I think it's helpful for everyone to understand this system that's driving them in certain ways through their daily lives. It's not just something that we want to pay attention to in therapy. It's not a, and actually in the therapy that I do, what I'm trying to do is help people become active operators of their own nervous systems. So I think that's really what I'm hoping, is that everybody will, know enough about their own nervous system and how it works, so that they can then be able to befriend it and engage with it in new ways.
Yeah. And so maybe an entry point there is to say that the nervous system is going to be responding very differently when we're in a situation where we're safe versus when there is a sense of threat.
Yes, and that perception of safety then allows us to do what you and I are doing right now, to communicate, to connect, even though it's across a screen, to share this experience together and be in it together. And then a sense of danger moves us into a state of protection. And we either, feel some anxiety, or we feel some anger. We want to get big and stand our ground and fight back, or we're ready to run away and get out of here, or the other response that this brilliantly creative biology brings to us is this place of just giving up, of sort of I don't care, give up, whatever sort of place. So yes, depending on how we're perceiving the world at any moment, our nervous system is going to bring one of those energies to life inside us. So, those are sort of the three building blocks of our nervous system, right? We've got that.
Oh my goodness, I actually transitioned back to slides without closing the window for the first time ever, I think. All right, so this is what the building blocks that she's alluding to are like. So there's the down, and it's really about the when we use the word hierarchy before, imagine there's like boxes, like they're blocks that are stacking. So dorsal vagal, that's that threat response where we're immobilized, shut down, collapsed. The only way to get from that, or dissociated, that's another way that dorsal vagal presents. The only way to get from that to ventral vagal, the safe, connected, engaging, that kind of vagal, you have to move through this one. That is what the principle of hierarchy means. So here we are in shutdown, collapse, dissociation. We have to move through mobilization, action taking. We have to move through fight and flight. Then we can move into the state of ventral vagal. So you can't go directly from dorsal vagal to ventral vagal. You have to move through this one. That was new information for me, and I found that really helpful to think about. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course that makes sense. But in my own life now, having this lens of understanding, you're like, oh, I got it, okay. As opposed to just, yeah, it's like random when I can get from here to here. It's not random. It has to move through here. So this is a slide that we shared with you the first week of January. These were some of the I thought, really awesome quotes that the author has that have just neutral language. My autonomic nervous system is activated. There's no judgment, there's no connotations, there's no, it just is. My autonomic nervous system's activated. I'm having a survival response or a protection response. That's what dorsal vagal and sympathetic drive are about. So survival response, having a survival response. My body is trying to send me a message. Just simply, once you get a little bit more self-awareness, and you can match how do you, and there's exercises in the book that kind of teach you how to figure out what state you're in. But just to name, if you developed that awareness, I am in the sympathetic activation state. I am in the dorsal vagal state. I'm in the ventral vagal state. Just neutral. Here I am. But maybe take some practice. I also really appreciate this quote. We need to remember that well-being is not defined by a nervous system that is always in regulation. A nervous system that brings qualities of well-being still dysregulates, but rather than remaining stuck in a survival response, it finds its way back to regulation through flexibility and resilience. So it's the idea of shifting from state to state and the more nuanced moves that happen even within one state. She refers to the idea of an autonomic journey, where there's react, something happens, you react to it, and then return to regulation. And then maybe later there can be some reflection around that. So it's just well-being is the flexibility, the ability to shift between states and recover. And so it's not about It's not about avoiding dysregulation. It's just learning how to navigate it. So I mentioned there are these experiential exercises, and so this one is probably the simplest one. So I wanted to share this one. There's for all of them though, there are these prompts to ask yourself as you're like exploring your autonomic nervous system. But just the idea of, here you are, where am I? What's happening in my environment? Who's around? What am I doing? What state has been activated? Just these, a lot of times we're just all caught up and doing all the things, but just like slowing down and just, where am I? What's around me? What am I doing? What messages is my nervous system sending me? So that's an example. But that's a chapter 1 exercise. So the exercises that go throughout the book get increasingly more nuanced. There's a chapter called Longing for Connection. Let me pull that one up. We come into the world wired for connection. With our first breath, we embark on a lifelong quest to feel safe in our bodies, in our environments, and in our relationships with others. We are born needing to be welcomed by another human being, and this essential need lasts for a lifetime. When basic survival needs are met, but there's no safe and predictable sense of connection to another person, without those connections, we have more difficulty regulating emotions, experience low self-esteem, and struggle to create lasting, healthy relationships. And while we may give up the active search for people to connect with, our nervous system never stops looking for, waiting for, and longing for connection. Until the day we die, we long for safe and reliable connections. Co-regulation is essential, first for survival, and then for living a life of well-being. I'll leave one more paragraph. We are wired for connection, wish for connection, and wait for connection. And yet, so often, it's been in our connections that we have felt not seen, not understood, not welcomed, and not safe. And so, the biological consequences of that is to develop these protection responses or survival responses in the sympathetic activation and dorsal vagal states. If you're interested in that topic as the idea of social connection and survival and social connection as medicine, Lizzie's going to drop a link to Brain Club from last year with our community advisory board member, Sarah Knutson, sharing a really powerful presentation on this topic. I'm just noting in the chat, Steve says, I appreciate the quote about flexibility and the ability to move between states and recover. It helps to paint a picture of part of what good autistic ADHD, etc. health might look like. I love that observation. Yes, exactly. Because I think there's also this mythology. I mean, it starts in childhood. You're like, don't cry, you shouldn't be crying, stop crying. It's like, actually, I'm crying because I'm regulating. This is how my body is trying to regulate and move through my states. And it's just the idea that you're always supposed to look calm or be calm or whatever. It's not based in science, but those were the messages that so many of us got. Yes, Bruno, I agree that Sarah's presentation was awesome. So actually related to that comment about kids getting the wrong message, without the early experiences of safely co-regulating, self-regulating strategies are created as a survival response. So that's the sympathetic activation and dorsal vagal responses. So we don't have safe co-regulation experiences. We're trying to self-regulate, but we don't they end up being strategies that are not they're not adaptive in terms of we don't learn the skills of coming back from them. We get into them and we stay stuck in them. We stay stuck in sympathetic activation. We're stuck in dorsal vagal. While we may look like we're doing well, our internal experience may be one of sympathetically driven fear. So, like guys, often we'll talk about with our patients that how someone's internal experience may very well not match their external experience, and I think that's really common. But mostly or partially, what that is about is that it's not been safe to show on the outside what an internal experience is. Let me see if there's anything else from this page. Yeah, I think that's good. So Deb Dana distinguishes between social support and social connection. Social support comes from the people we can count on to show up and help us in concrete ways, and who make it possible for us to manage our daily living. Social connection, on the other hand, comes from the people in our life we know and who know us in deep ways. This is the person we call when we're feeling distressed and need someone to sit quietly with us without offering advice. The person who understands our need to rant sometimes and celebrates us when life is good. Socially connected relationships are filled with reciprocity. With social connection, we give and take, offer and receive. There's rhythm to the relationships. When we build a pattern of acting from a survival state, we suffer both physically and psychologically. We may be successful in the world, but we don't feel satisfied or find joy in our experiences. All right, I'm gonna wrap up with one more video. This one's really short.
When I look at these systems that are so big and overwhelming to me, and I don't know where to go, I come back here because this is where I can be responsible. And if I am in a place of biological regulation, I am putting that energy out into the world. And every being around me, every nervous system around me feels that. Right? There's a transmission that happens nervous system to nervous system, whether I'm talking as we are or whether I'm just moving through the world. And I think that is a powerful thing for us to recognize, that we're responsible for the autonomic information we're putting out into the world. And when we walk through the world from this place of regulation, we are letting every being around us know that we are safe and inviting them to feel that and come into connection. And I think, I joke, I say we change the world one nervous system at a time, but I do think this is how it begins. And we get a critical mass of people who are feeling safe enough. And none of us feel this all the time. We all move into survival and find our way back to safety. That happens all the time, normal, expected experience, but not getting stuck in survival, coming back to safety. And when enough of us can do that, then I think the systems will begin to change, and we will have people in leadership positions and who can go in and say, here is how these systems can change.
On that note, we can open this up to Liz, that's funny. Open this up to discussion. I'd love to hear what has stood out to you. What are you taking away from this conversation, these excerpts, these videos?
Love to hear if anybody wants to share. Kylie says how adding perception to neuroception allows us to reflect on an experience. Yeah, I loved that part too. I loved that because for me, that language of neuroception perception coupling is what it's called in the book. Is it's like it feels like it contributes to a sense of agency. Is like I get to appraise what's happening, and then everything else follows from there. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else in the chat or out loud? Anything you're
Hi
taking away?
everyone, this is Annika, and I just have a question. I was wondering if you could possibly talk a little bit more about the three stages that you have to go through, like on the ladder or like in the dynamic box. I think you were
Sure.
talking about it, but I just wasn't sure as to like an example, or I don't know. I just find it very right now it's like up in the air and I haven't been able to like understand it really like because I'm thinking like is it very specific action? Like I just don't know how it would be in a practical
Yeah.
sense, that's all.
Yeah, sure. The three states, the three nervous system states are called ventral vagal, which means safe and connected. There's dorsal vagal, which is dissociation, collapse, shutdown, and sympathetic, which is fight or flight or freeze, or fight or flight. I think a resource that might be helpful to you, I'm going to try to pull it up, is an old brain club that we've done called Nervous System 101. I'm going to try to pull that up, and I will put that in the chat. That's probably that's where I would point you to for more specifics.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. Monique shares in the chat the part about social connection versus social support was particularly sparkly. I liked the distinction. Yeah, me too. Anybody else want to share? Oh, thanks, Lizzie. That's awesome. You got there first. Lizzie's the best. It's also Lizzie's birthday. Happy birthday, Lizzie. Awesome. Paul says, I know that I often thwart making connections, even though I want them. I wonder how my autonomic nervous system is involved in this. Yeah, Paul, that's so common. Like what comes up for me about that is that remembering that dorsal vagal shutdown is a state of energy conservation. And when we don't have enough energy, we just like can't do the thing. And so if we are exhausted, if we're in burnout, if we are, we're having medical flares, we're having all kinds of things, we just may not have capacity for something else. And so anyway, that's the first thing that came up for me around, self-thwarting or self-obstructing or whatever that is. It may not be that. I mean, it might be that, but it might just be like, yeah, I just like don't have capacity. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, I just want to add a spin on what you're saying, Mel, because I think what's a really interesting thing is for a lot of us, I mean, with the idea of social connection, if social connection were safe and felt safe, it would actually I mean, if we had experienced social connection in a way that felt safe, the way that the hormones in the other parts of the body system work, it would actually either give energy or give calm. So it would actually give something rewarding. The problem for me, and I'm guessing for a number of other people I've talked to in our community, is we mostly have experienced social connection as not safe. And for me, I've particularly experienced it as not safe when I'm having a hard time. And so that I don't have the energy to, I can't afford to risk social to risk social connection. I mean, a lot of times you get blamed for isolating or, self-destructive, why aren't you, hanging out with it? And the reality is, if social connection is actually, usually when I reach out, I don't have just one problem, I have two problems. I have the problem I started out with, and then I have the problem that this other human being is creating for me by the way they're responding to the fact that I'm in distress and having a hard time. And so I couldn't afford the first problem. I certainly can't afford the second one. So for me, it's a fairly logical thing, and it's something a lot of autistic people get blamed for, but it's actually like the problem is like the culture and the way the culture is relating to us, not like that we're doing something intrinsically wrong. So anyway, my thoughts on it.
So well said. No, I could not agree more. Thank you. Sierra, you want to wrap us up?
I just wanted to connect into what you were saying, Sarah. It connected for me for one of Alvar's comments earlier about how it sometimes feels frustrating about how our nervous system keeps looking for connection, because it feels easier and safer often to not. And so just thankful for finding community where you can really see that connection can be made with minimizing those steps that you're talking about, Sarah, minimizing all the other stuff that comes with making a connection, for those of us who have a lot of our experience with relational trauma.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. That's really important. Yeah. Because it can really be different. I mean, that's what ABB is doing, is making it different and making those possibilities different. But until it's different,
Right.
it isn't different. Yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a great segue into next week's Brain Club, where we look at, the aspects of relationships that make it so that we're not safe to show up authentically, not safe to show up for all that we are as our, full selves, true selves, as we start looking at the cost of masking, recognizing that masking is an involuntary, automatic response to a lack of felt safety. So I love Kay's comment. I want to wrap up with Kay's comment. I love that. I love that so much. Kay says, I define connection as safe. When it's not safe, it's not a connection. Oh, I have chills. Oh, thank you, Kay. Yes. Yes. On that note, thank you all for being here. Thank you for being part of our community, and we look forward to seeing you next week at Brain Club. Have a good week. Bye.